guys, we are back at Backyard Brewing. It's been a while since we've been over here, but I'm happy to be in the hot seat again with Mr. Mike. How you been, Mike?
Fantastic. How about yourself?
Life's awesome. That's all I'm gonna say.
We're here
Life
there,
is
yeah,
great.
it's
Life
great.
is fun, especially when you have a nice cold beer in front of you.
Prost.
And what are we drinking right here?
This is my Cosmic Dream. It's a New England style IPA
Oh, that's good.
with 5 different fruit and hops and a little bit of lactose.
Excellent.
Yeah, just a
That's the
little bit.
special ingredient, huh?
Well, special ingredients, love.
Of course.
Yes.
Love, guys. That's why we do this. All right, so today we are going to do a little interview with Mike. We're going to ask him some questions about why he wanted to become an entrepreneur and why he decided to choose the brewing industry for his realm of expertise. So we're just going to bounce right into the first question.
Yep.
Why did you decide to become an entrepreneur?
So funny story. It's really not like, it wasn't a conscious decision that I sought out. It was a good opportunity that came along, and it just was the choice of the moment. It was the right choice at the time. I met a person through a family member who had a business that was sitting idle. I had a set of skills to run that business, and we came to an agreement, and that's kind of what we went with. So, yeah.
But you definitely liked beer beforehand.
Oh no, love beer beforehand.
Right.
I would never have thought about doing this on my own. But yeah, so that's the thing is like that's a huge part of entrepreneurship is being able to identify opportunities when they come, and having the gumption to go with it. Because it was a risk at the time. I mean, I was still looking for work, but you jump into something like this. It's a commitment. You're going to be doing this for the next couple months of your life, putting everything else aside. Yeah.
So you have to have a little bit of passion to go into something like this, right?
I think it's important. Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, and a passion comes in all stripes. Is it passion for what you're doing, or passion for the act of making the business itself? I've met a guy who was a multimillionaire, and he just liked starting businesses. That's what he wanted to do. He liked developing land, putting a business on that land, getting it up and running, and then going on to the next project.
Okay.
And that's, it comes in all stripes. I mean, I'm like as passionate about what I do, so I like to do that. I like to build this business. I like to do this business.
And having the autonomy to make your own decisions
Huge.
is a big part of being an entrepreneur.
It is. Yeah. There's
not having someone telling you what to do all the time. The freedom to make decisions.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of really fits in the definition of entrepreneurship, is that you're the person making the decisions. I mean, if you're not, then if you're just kind of going on the flow, then you're an investor or you are an employee. But the entrepreneur is the one who is gathering money and investing money and putting their own stuff on the line for it.
Yeah, your blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. Yep.
Great. No, that definitely meshes well with some of the definitions that I've come across of entrepreneurship.
Excellent. My 5 minutes of research before this really paid off.
Gotta love that Google. The old
great.
Google machine. So you kind of already answered my next question. What influenced you to identify and pursue an opportunity? You just kind of said you saw the opportunity come and you decided to run with it because it aligned with some of the things that you were already interested in.
Yeah. And that's a big part of it, is just, again, identifying good opportunities when they show up and then taking.
So this might kind of transition to the next question. Your background, family history, prior experience, work experience, did anything kind of help lend a hand to jumping into this venture?
So with a lot of things, it's all that random luck, right? So I have a master's in exercise physiology and biomechanics. I have a lot of schooling. It's worthless.
Oh.
Don't go to school, kids. But no, my first job out of my master's program was working at a brewery. My friend started a brewery, and I knew about brewing. I liked beer, and it was a good opportunity for me, good opportunity for them, because they needed someone they could trust to work with them. And I worked with them, and I did big batch brewing and managed their tap room. I did a whole bunch of things with them.
Nice. What was the name of that brewery?
Backfish Brewing in Pearland.
In Pearland.
Great place.
Chris is right down the street.
He's way too tall.
Way too tall. So Backfish, that was your first introduction to actually working at a brewery.
Yes, which is great because it was everything. It's like a little bit of brewing, a little bit of cellaring, cleaning, managing the front of the house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and especially for a new business. So that's always exciting, and it's always probably the best place to learn about businesses is being there for those first 6 months. Like, you can learn so much about like what works, what doesn't, how businesses evolve.
Right.
I mean, one of my favorite adages I learned was you can always add more hours, you can never take them away.
You can always add more hours.
Yes. So like when you open up, you know, if you want to be conservative, you say you're not open Mondays and Tuesdays.
Hours of operation.
Hours of operation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were playing Father Time here for a second.
Oh no.
Adding more hours to the day.
Can't do that.
Okay.
Can't do that.
You got me excited for a second.
You can take hours out.
Okay.
I can take hours out.
So, speaking of hours of operation, you can always add more, but you don't want to start off with being open every single day.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of comes down to what your scope is, comes down to what you're trying to do. I mean, if you're opening a restaurant, like that's going to have lunch and dinner service, yeah, there's no reason not to be open almost every day. But you've seen a lot of good restaurants that are successful that are closed on Mondays
Mm-hmm.
because it's just not a very profitable day. In most industries, it's not a very profitable day.
Mondays are slow.
Yep, but if you have Mondays, you determine they're not profitable, you take Mondays away, there's going to be a group of people who come in on Mondays who are going to be disappointed that you're not open on Mondays anymore. And it's going to cause confusion, and it's not very good. Especially for a business that's in its first year.
It's
having that,
inception phase.
yeah, having that, it's not good. It's also, your optics aren't very good either. Like, oh, well, they're closed on Mondays now? I wonder if they weren't doing very well.
Right.
Yeah.
And so right now, your hours of operation here at this brewery, do you
Yeah.
mind telling the viewership
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
got
So
going?
we're open from 4 to 9 on Friday, noon to 9, or no, sorry, 2 to 9 on Saturday, noon to 5 on Sundays. So really scattered hours. I mean, that's things we're trying to take advantage of the afternoons and afternoons on Friday, the afternoons on Saturday, and like the active times that I've seen on Sundays.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm usually here later in most days because if people are here, I'll stay open. But that's one of the great things about having your own place is that if you have people in the tap room and you want to stay open another hour, it's not that big of a deal.
Right. No, that's great. Going on, this is great material, by the way. Loving this. Did you use anything to evaluate this opportunity to run this brewery?
Mostly math.
Okay.
A lot of the math you say you're never going to use again. I mean, mostly sitting down and doing like income projections
Okay.
based on amount that the brewery was able to produce at the time. So when I first got here, it had a certain number of fermenters, had a certain amount of space, a certain amount of equipment, and I sat down and looked at the time investiture to make enough product to make enough items worth selling, and broke that down versus how much we could sell it for, and it was what influenced a little bit of the decision. That was an important part of it, especially if you're going to expand and whatnot. Use that. But yeah, that was probably the biggest part, is looking at going, yeah, this could be economically viable if we keep our scope like limited to just very, very specific things. Then yes.
You've used that word several times now, and maybe you can elaborate more on scope.
Yeah.
So maybe define scope and how you have used scope for this business.
So okay, so at least to me, scope is the goals of your operation. It's everything. So for us, our goal is to serve a population of a 5-mile radius around the brewery. That's the
5 miles.
5 miles, just about 5 miles around there. So we want people coming to us. That's our scope for that. Our distribution's limited to 10-mile radius. I don't like going further than Galveston. I mean, Galveston's as far as I'll go as far as distribution goes.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer closer because we're trying to drive stuff here.
Right.
We're not doing anything crazy, so we're not doing canning, so we have to worry about like canning machines or the stuff that goes along with that. Our basis is, I think, at most 15 accounts is what we're looking for as far as outside of sales.
Okay.
And that's as much as we can logistically support anyway. And so our scope isn't like, we don't want to get into Houston, we don't want to have 50 accounts, we don't want to like be running out of beer and be like, oh, well, we'll get some next week, that kind of stuff. We want to have enough beer that the tap room is stocked, people can come to the tap room and enjoy it, and that's also our main money maker. And then we have enough to make beer out to get interest to come back.
Okay. So a majority, your biggest profit margins are made here in the tap room,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's where more bang for your buck comes for the business.
Yeah.
Is right here where I'm sitting.
Yep.
Drinking this cosmic dream.
Yep.
It's really, really good. Oh, and there's people if you want to go.
Oh yeah. What's going on, guys? How you doing?
Hey, how are you?
Fantastic. Beautiful day.
How you guys
Seeing
doing?
you in a while.
Oh yeah.
But what were some of the perceived risks that you saw in the beginning that might have deterred you from moving forward?
So luckily in this endeavor, my risk was just my time. I mean, like, time is valuable. Don't get me wrong. Like, this has been the last 3 years of my life, And so the more you get into it, the more time you spend into it, so the more you have to sort of like worry about the sunk cost fallacies and whatnot. But the perceived risks was yeah, as I said, just the time I would spend getting it up and going. Now with future endeavors, we have an expansion in the works. That's actually a lot more interesting. Is that you look at the risks for that? Is that you actually have a set of benefits to measure it against, like what you have here versus what you're going to expand into, what you're going to go into after that. And I mean, really, for me, it always comes down to numbers. I sit down, I crunch the numbers, I sit down, look at the math. I look at the best case scenarios, look at the worst case scenarios, especially look at the worst case scenarios. You know, the whole thing of how much money do I need to keep this thing at zero to stay open every month. And you look at that and go, well, how much work is needed for that? And that's one of the ways you can gauge your risk, is that, you know, okay, well, you know, with my loan repayments and power bills and salary for X amount of employees, supplies for brewing enough beer to make those sales, you know, you could look at it and say, okay, I need to make this much money if I have this many people come in. And you can sit there and you gauge it, saying, like, if I need 5,000 people to buy X amount of beers a month, then that's a certain amount of risk. Or if I need 200 people to buy a beer a month to keep it zero. I mean, that's the best way to look at it.
So when you say zero, you mean breaking even?
Breaking even, yeah.
Like, so our viewers out there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think of things in
so I'm here
terms.
I'm here for you. He's here for me, but he's also here for you. So you're basically crunching the numbers to see what it takes at least for you to keep the doors open.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the thing is, you have that as a starting point. You could look at it and go, okay, well, if I only have to worry about having 500 customers, or 500 customers in a month, which is for like an expansion for your scope, back to the buzzword, if your scope of 500 customers is, if that's doable and realistically, then you could look at that as your risk and going, okay, I think we can do that. Realistically, I can gauge that based on traffic patterns, based on local economic factors, based on all these things. I can say that this is a doable number. And then from that, you can say, like, if we do 2,000, can we support that capacity? Is that something we can do? And you can gauge your success from that as well.
Okay. No, that's great. That's a great way to kind of benchmark the future, and that kind of would go back into projections too. If you were to write a business plan and your business model for someone opening their own brewery, they would want at least a year's projections by month or quarter.
5 years.
5-year business plan.
So my business plan right now has full projections for 3 years. Realistically, you kind of want like a 1-3-5.
1-3-5.
Because I adapted it from my other business plan, which was month to month over 3 years.
Okay.
And that was kind of the whole thing, is that, you know, the longer you go out, because it also allows you to say, like, our plan for growth is this. If we make our minimum profit goals, we can expand to do this.
Okay.
We're going to do this. So, like, for example, in the brewing industry, I have mine set up on 50% capacity. If I'm using my system for 50% of the amount of space and of time that I have it available, I can make this much beer, and if I sell this much beer in as it's made, so for example, like, every beer that's made in a month is replaced by the end of the month. We're at zero. That's my minimums. And so every year it goes up by 25%. So 50% the first year, 75% the next year, and then 100% capacity by year 3. And that's kind of how I base all of our baseline operations.
That's awesome. Setting goals always kind of helps keep your eyes to the future.
Yes.
And it keeps you in step with the month-to-month grind.
Yep.
And that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's also important too, because, you know, at least in the brewing industry, if you estimate, like, oh yeah, if I have that machine running nonstop, 100% capacity from the day one, you know, you have all that, you have no room for growth. But more importantly, you can easily overshoot. Like we talked about with Dan a second ago, you can overshoot, have too much product, and then you're not utilizing time correctly. You've got things sitting in tanks, you've got things sitting in kegs, you've got beer getting old, so then you've got all those things there. So having that undershooting to get you overshooting, because you can always add more, can't take away.
You guys hear that? You can always add more.
You can always add more.
So moving to the next couple of questions, I'm going to kind of meld them together because they're kind of asking the same thing. Were there any specific activities or opportunities that you saw that made this into a business? If you had to maybe choose, like, what made you go from not having a brewery to having a brewery? What were the biggest events that made this place happen?
It was when a customer handed me a form of currency in exchange for goods and or services.
Was this before the brewery was open or after?
So
maybe legally we shouldn't talk about that, right?
No. I mean, we've had a license. We've had a legal license since the moment I walked in here. Everything's fine. Everything's above board. Everything's above board.
Not brash.
Not brash brewing. It's kind of weird. Like being the first business that I've been a part of, like personally, it really doesn't like sink in until you have a room full of people that are here for something that you're doing. We had our soft opening. And I had like 50 people.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, like it was this place. This room was full. We had tables outside. There was tons of people around having a good time talking, and just it kind of sunk in. These people were here for something that I'm making. Mm-hmm. This is a product that I've produced and that I've marketed and that they are consuming. So yeah.
And so that's that realization when you saw that many people out here to support you was kind of the turning point in your head where you said, hey, this is a viable business idea.
Yeah.
I think this is going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
I mean, that's the same thing with everything. Is like, it's getting those sales, getting those first sales, getting that first ramp up is where you start realizing, oh yeah, okay, this is good. I'm not just like super in my own head about
Like
how
dreaming
cool it's gonna be.
about it. I'm actually seeing this like real time.
Yes.
Awesome. We only have a couple more questions. Mike's been great. His beer tastes phenomenal. He's out here in Dickinson, Backyard Brewing. Definitely come check this place out. I'll throw a few more plugs in before the end of the video. But as we go to our next, last set of questions, when did you open Backyard Brewing?
So we were planning on opening in March of 2020.
Old 2020.
We all know how that worked out. And then we ended up opening the tap room in 2021 April. In fact, we actually acquired this space where the tap room is in March of 2020 when our neighbors moved out and we were able to pick it up as part of our deal. So yeah. Because original scope was we were just going to do small distribution, have the brewery and just do distributed kegs within a small radius. But this is also a really good lesson on adjusting your business plan on the fly. I don't know if that's the next question or whatnot, but it's a
no. This is great stuff. I'm loving this.
So I love opportunities. Opportunities are great. We talked about how it's important to seize opportunities you can, but it's also important to adjust your plans based on opportunities. We had the opportunity to open the tap room, which is great. It was to give us a whole new outlet. We did not adjust the plans for operating the tap room, so it's led to some difficulties in a way. So when you're sold, like we have an ownership group, so there's 3, 4, 5 people who own parts of this thing. One person owns a certain percentage of it, and I own a percentage of it. But the only person working here is me, and so we forgot to look at like how much work would be done if we had a tap room in addition to all our other things. And so having the tap room was great; it's good profits, but we also stunted ourselves because I was pushing myself to 110% of my working capacity instead of staying within the scope that we had wanted. So while we were able to make rent and all our payments and a little bit of profit on top of it, there probably could have been a better way to look at it as far as like changing up how we're going to organize things or changing up how we're going to allocate money in the beginning that would have been better.
That's interesting that you brought up having to think on the fly because what I've read in just a few short chapters of my entrepreneurial book is that when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be able to improvise and adapt on the fly and make key decisions quickly without a lot of time to think about it. And so judging from what you said, you had a lot of that in the first year or so, or maybe even the 6 months.
Yeah.
You had to think on the fly and act quickly.
Yeah.
And sometimes, hindsight 2020, you could have made, no pun intended, but you could have always made better to sit. Yeah, he just finally got it. 2020, we were just talking about it. Mike doesn't like puns.
I love puns.
do.
I love puns. I hate it when I don't get them right away.
But yeah, we can always armchair quarterback on Monday when we've already known what went down. But being in the thick of it, you have to be able to make moves now, not later.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, it's like you can make the decisions now, but make sure that you're also going through and adjusting everything else to accommodate those decisions. Like, it's the same thing. You make widgets, right? And you get a really good deal on a widget machine twice as big and twice as fast. But you don't have the power to power a widget machine. So then you buy the widget machine, but then you've got to go find an electrician who's going to put extra power into your place.
Right.
Find out that you don't have X, Y, and Z to get it, or it's going to cost way out of budget to get widget machine up and running. So yeah, same concept.
Same concept. Gotta love those widgets.
Widgets, man.
A few more questions, Mike, then we'll let you go because we know you have thirsty customers here in the tap room.
Yahoo! Yeah.
Were there any key individuals when you first started up that played an integral role in you getting to where you're at right now?
So the investors we have are amazing.
Okay.
That was a big part of it. Is finding an investment team that is aligned with your goals, that you trust, that can help with certain things you need them help with. I mean, there's always investors that are like, just give you money, make money on it. I don't want to do anything else. But the ones we have were very flexible in that, like, hey, do you need anything else?
Mm-hmm.
We can do these things. Like the tables we're sitting at. One of my investors literally bought the lumber for him and then showed up one day and made tables with me.
Wow.
For like 8 hours.
That's great.
Yeah, so stuff like that. Family is always important. If you're lucky enough to have family members that are able to give you a hand, it's always good to have them around. People you can trust, you don't have to pay.
Yeah, family's good for something, right?
Right.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
So just finding good core people to surround yourself with, whether it's investors, family, employees, you just want to make sure those individuals are kind of that it's thought about before you pick them.
Yes.
Right. You want to give some thought.
Because like as we just talked about Dan off camera, is that it's about trust. It's about like finding people you can trust, who you can deal with equitably. So it's important.
Well, I have one more question for you, Mr. Mike.
Let's do it.
What advice would you give to an entrepreneur or someone wanting to be an entrepreneur? How would you go about giving them some sage wisdom on how to get started?
Go find a 9-to-5. Get insurance. Marry. Reproduce.
Find a sugar mama? No, not find a sugar
No. Getting started is so your best bets. I mean, I could give you all kinds of advice. I could tell you all kinds of things, but the most important thing is not what someone's going to tell you. It's what you can see for yourself. Go find other places that are just starting up and talk to them about what they're doing and find the people in your industry and talk to veterans, talk to newbies, find out about their starting experiences. Because the more experience you get at that, the better off you're going to be. Find out what mistakes other people made and learn from those mistakes.
And that can be applied to pretty much anything.
It's pretty much any field. Like I had a young man who wanted to be an engineer, and I'm like, we're in the city of engineers, my friend. What kind of engineer do you want? You want aerospace? Like, I can give you numbers of 5 or 6 offices. You can go pound down those doors and beg to just see them and do those things. Or, I got a young man was wanting to get into CNC machines.
Yeah.
Do that, and so I pointed to some people there and go talk to them, and a lot of times they're willing to like show you and just talk to you, like even just a lunch to say, hey, how'd you get into this business? What would you recommend I do? That kind of stuff. I mean, people in the trades, people in crafts, and people who do things that they love to do for a living like to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So it's about finding those people and doing that. Entrepreneurship is a little interesting though, but again, it's you find the fields, you find the people. I mean, even a franchise, you can go talk to some franchise. That's actually a good one to talk to too. Is like find franchises and find out what they do and what they have to go through.
Right. And I would say, just in my experience in the brewing industry and seeing how they interact, there's almost a brotherhood that's in the brewing industry that might not be in other industries.
That's very true. Brewing is so because of the nature of brewing is equal parts science and art, and like brewers themselves tend to be social, jovial. They like to drink. They like to have fun. And that's one of the byproducts of our industry. Jovial, yes.
I love that word.
That's a good word.
Jovial.
And so it does kind of make this camaraderie because we all, and our industry is interesting because it's not kind of like a just add water. It's success industry. If you can make beer, you can add water.
It's literally
add water. Literally just add water. It's not
It's
just easy.
mostly water. Right?
I have met amazing brewers who had breweries who failed within a year. And I have met mediocre brewers who continue to produce beer to this day. So it's not that easy. So yeah. And so our industry is really weird like that, in that it's easy to find someone who's willing to talk to you and willing to mentor, willing to like give you advice. Other industries, I'm not quite so sure. I mean,
Right.
again, with the exercise physiology one, I met a lot of people who were like, "Oh yeah, I'll give you some advice," and that was it. And they don't. There's no way in. There's no getting in stuff unless you want to make your own business and open your own gym. There's not a lot you can really do with that.
Right. So the moral of the story is there's always enough beer to go around for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, if you do it right,
The beer's always half full.
right?
We can only hope.
We can only hope. But yeah,
Well, guys, I just want to say thank you for viewing. I want to say thank you for Mike for giving us some time today to kind of walk us through where he's been, where he's going. I'm going to give him, just as we end the video, a few quick moments to explain what's coming up. I know he might not be able to talk about everything, but he might be able to give you a little sneak peek on what's on the horizon. So Mike, you want to take it away?
yeah. So speaking of expansions, we're actually looking to start a new venture going forward in the city of Dickinson, and so we're working with several outlets right now to finance and get it prepared. So yeah, can't talk. Huh? New beers. Oh, new beers. Like immediately. No, nothing quite new on the horizon. I gotta get a lot of our standard beers made because can't fall behind on those. We have our blonde coming out. Blonde's in the tank right now. We're at the strawberry version of the blonde, which will be a lot of fun. People like that one. And then up that is the IPA. So got to do another standard IPA, do another Cosmic Dream, another Hop Cycle 100. Yeah. So like, it's great. Everyone gets behind it. Everyone has to like maintain what they have. So that's what we're doing the next couple weeks.
Give a good old Craft Brew Hero sign off.
What's the Craft Brew Hero sign off? Is it like a secret sign or
Yeah.
like
Just like that.
Craft Brew Hero?